Hello, everyone. I'm Venkat, usually known as Ven. I'm an integration developer working at Rothbone Brothers in Liverpool. So I've been an integration developer. I used to be an ETL developer before starting the MuleSoft, and I used to do a bit of Del Boomi as well. And I've been working with MuleSoft for about 3.5 years, and with Mule 4 for the last 2 years when it was first introduced, which was quite challenging in the beginning. Worked my way through so far. So I would like to present from the concepts which I'm aware of, and I'm sure most of you has already moved on to Mule 4 already, I guess, most of the projects, but there are some key interesting topics. I'm actually not intending to compare much of Mule 3 with Mule 4. Well, I'm going to lightly touch on the improvements made from MEL to Dataweave 2. So I would call it as a power of transformation, a Dataweave, which is compared to most of us being developers like Java developers, Python, or we used to write the code. Dataweave has been introduced in Mule 4 a couple of years back, and it has emerged as one of the powerful languages where we can do lots of transformation. So far, so good. I mean, I haven't had any issues with transformations, but I would appreciate at the end of this session if you have come across any issues with Dataweave, working on Dataweave. So moving on. So yeah, just a community message. It's time for us to be home, just to stay alive. So just a bit of background and overview on the Dataweave. Like I said, it's introduced in Mule 4. And it replaced the MEL, which is a Mule expression language, which most of the Mule developers working on Mule 3 onwards, Mule 3, 3.8 or 3.9 must be aware of Mule expression language, writing those expressions as well. And Dataweave is mainly supported, Dataweave 2 is supported from any 0.7 onwards. If I have to be precise as Dataweave 2. There was a Dataweave 1 as well in the previous versions. So I would say some of the features, the cool features, I could say the new functions or methods are added. There is very much improved power in the transformation. And the syntaxes have been very much simplified comparatively. Some of you might aware like attributes, how it used to present in Mule 3 and MEL. Now it's become like very easy. And most of them are really camel casing. And which is quite handy for the Java developers. If you have to write a function or if you have to write some sort of function, it's mainly simplified as a camel case, and in most cases. And the ease of learning, it's quite easy. So some people coming from ETL background with some less coding knowledge of Java or Python, I believe the Dataweave has given the good opportunity to learn, experiment things. There was quite a lot of improvements ever since for the last 2 years. Now there was lots of cool functions added, like you can even do joins like SQL and security and whatnot. I mean, we can actually go through some of them today. The process flows are simplified compared to Mule 3 versions. I meant to say I've done projects in Mule 3 and Mule 4. So the power of Dataweave is I've used like the 50% of the flows have been cut down using the Dataweave. So in simple words, like if I use a Dataweave, I can actually define the variables within the Dataweave itself and a payload and a DWL. So the maximum, there is no actual limit on how many variables you can declare on one Dataweave. I've done up to 10 to 15 variables in one Dataweave, which is a cool process. Like if you put the variables across set variables, components one after each other, you can imagine the 15 lines of the flow actually can be cut down very simply. And yeah, so let's move on to the capabilities, actually, what Dataweave can do and what it can do. I would appreciate some comments actually at the end of the session today. So it's actually, it replaced the type transformations, like it mainly replaced the type transformation like object transformations like JSON to XML transformation, those kind of transformations. We can simply write like, I want to transfer this from JSON to XML, Java to JSON, JSON to XMJSON. There's quite a lot of them actually. And it has actually simplified the binary data. I know there was actually in Dataweave 1 as well, there was good capabilities of transforming the binary data. But this Dataweave 2, I find it really, really very helpful in transforming binary data, and also the base 64 encryption as well. So, and also the cool thing in Mule 4 is Dataweave language. We can actually, you don't need to put a Dataweave expression itself. We can use the Dataweave language expression in any connector. In most of the connectors, like HTTP connector, you can use a Dataweave expression, or maybe you can use Salesforce connector, or I could say AWS connectors, S2S connectors, S3 connectors. So I don't need to write most of the Dataweave expressions outside the connectors. And that's a really cool feature where I can use the Dataweave. I'm sure some of you might have used the database connectors, which is quite common in Mule 3 and Mule 4. So in Mule 3, for the database connectors, we had to write some expressions outside the database, select statement or bulk insert and those kind of transformations. But in here, we can write within the connector itself. I can actually give a little bit of a demo on this. So yeah, I would say, like example, I want to transform something. I got a Dataweave expression. If I just want to transform something from how it used to be in Dataweave 3 was we had to write transformation. So let's say I put JSON. This is very basic transformation. So, or I can XML. So CS, which is a quite handy transformations where we can actually come across with this Dataweave. Let's say I have a piece of code where I want to transform this. So I can declare a variable like this. Of course, this is a cool function in Dataweave 1 as well. So like I said, I mean, we can actually create like a JSON or CSV before it loads. Let me see how it works with the Java. So you can see this Java string classes has been loaded. Let's see how it works with XML. No, there was an issue with XML values. So we need to define the XML values anyway. So these kind of transformations, not just to limit, there's quite a lot of key transformations where we can use within the Dataweave itself. And coming back to the connectors, I just want to take one example connector. So I'll take an insert, actually, a database insert. So within the insert connector, we can actually use Dataweave itself without actually specifying a Dataweave before the connector, which is a cool function on most of these connectors. So in here, we can use a function like a Dataweave. So I can actually write a transformation like data view transformations, where it's quite easy and handy. Let's say I will actually work back with this. So instead of using a data view outside this, I can actually use this here within the connector. So as like HTTP connector, not to name, most of the connectors I have come across, there is definitely an improved transformations within the connector itself compared to, I mean, traditionally when we use this MuleSoft connect, I mean, the Mule connectors in Mule old version. So like I said, I can actually use this as a connector. Okay, so I can write a select statement and insert the value actually. There's quite a lot to write for each connector anyway. This syntax may not be right for the select statement. So just to give you an overview actually. So going back. And the capabilities, so it's used in most components like file connector, like I said, database. This is a simple transformation. Like we can actually convert this as a number. It's not just limited to that. So set variable is, most of us use, 99% of use this expression anyway, in either in Mule 3 or Mule 4. But in here, Dataweave expression is used in the variable itself as well if we need to. So very commonly used, the power of transformations is a map and map object. And the map actually, it transforms the array list, and then map objects transform the object with a key value pair. So like you say, you can see an example of the array on the top actually, which actually gives an output with the map actually. So it's item and index pair, and the map object is, sorry, the map object is basically for an object, really, for a JSON object. There is quite a significant amount of transformations we can do. I'm not sure if some of you follow the MuleSoft forums. There's very complex transformations people are doing with Dataweave 2. There is a very much limitations where I can't see any limitation at all. But because the map and map object are very much commonly used in Dataweave expressions, and most of us in a daily life. So that's why I believe there's nothing that can't be explained. So eventually we get things better, like as in Dataweave 2. So the MIME types, like I explained earlier, the MIME types actually also used in one of those in the connectors, like request types. So most of the connectors actually, if you see on the left-hand side corner, they got these MIME types and the general and advanced. Realistically, most of them comes with a body where you can actually give a Dataweave expression in the body itself. Unlike the connectors in the previous versions, even in the headers or query parameters. So there is a way of, like, you can actually even reference the property file values within the body itself and also the headers itself as well. So anyway, we like in one of these connectors. So I just given an illustration of Dataweave HTTP request as a connector. And the parameters, which is very much simplified actually, how we used to call them as, like, in the old versions, we used to call them like message.inboundproperties.id or whatever. But now it has become like attributes, headers ID, or attribute query parameters or company. It can be any header or query params. But as you can see, it's camel casing. Camel casing has been very much influential actually, because most of the programming languages, programmers tend to follow camel casing, which is quite handy for writing these functions. So, and one important aspect, although may not be relevant to the Dataweave, but I can say variables are just variables in Dataweave 2, I mean in Mule 4. So the session variables and record variables are removed, just the variables. You can actually simply specify as vars dot, what's a variable name. So we can access these parameters in any component. So Dataweave 2 got a capability like we can actually define this, extract these attributes directly in the Dataweave 2 itself. Attributes, payload, or any other parameters, query params like that, we can actually extract them in the Dataweave itself, like we have seen. It's the will. We can actually do whatever it takes. So just moving on to the modules, Dataweave 2 modules and the types. Just an illustration of what I've given you so far, but it was quite a lot added to it. The core modules, like we can even camelize, capitalize, and quite a lot of things we can do with the Dataweave. I mean, like I say, that we can do wonders with the Dataweave expressions. The crypto languages, or we can actually define this runtime. Mostly, my ideology was working with Mule 3 and Mule 4 was where I had to write the custom modules. Most of you agree with me in the previous versions, but most of the modules are introduced in Mule 4 itself. Like we create the custom modules. Like the binaries are very handy nowadays for transformations. So these are the only sample core modules where the Dataweave types has been improved from every version from last 2 years. Every 2 months, I can see there was a new addition, like even the merge, SQL type of commands. Like I hope most of you are familiar with SQL scripting as well. Those type of commands have been added actually. Joins, left joins, right joins, those kind of joins been added as well. So we can do a lot with this Dataweave, improved Dataweave 2. So the new data formats, I can see the Avro. Not sure most of us work with Avro, but that's an added advantage. Like NDJSON, Java properties. Like I said, those joins can be used within the Dataweave as well. And so there was quite a lot of modules added recently as well. So yeah, so there's some useful links and resources where we can see Dataweaves. There was quite a lot of improvements made, and all the documentation is available online on the MuleSoft documentation with the Dataweave. And that's it. Thank you. Any questions, please go on.
Thanks, Glata. Any questions at all, anybody? Just a second in case. It just takes a while to get through. There's Ranjit's asked a question. It's in chat, Venkata. Any online editor for DWL?
There were some private tools actually. I'm not sure if you have seen. There were some private tools, but they're not MuleSoft recognized, honestly. So we can't really say authentication. Any online editors to validate RAML? Is that I think that's the question for Francis earlier.
Yes, it's no, it's any online editor for DWL.
Oh yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. There were some private sites where you can actually do a map and map object. There were some online editors, but they're not absolutely recognized within the MuleSoft. But like I said, you can use these key value pairs within the map object, map documentation. So I wouldn't say these definitely online editors with DWL. DWL mostly you create it and then we use it as a part of Dataweave expressions anyway. So far, I don't think MuleSoft has introduced any. If you come across any, please ping it to us.
There's one more question underneath that one. I think it's, just have a look. Is it possible to have a local Dataweave editor tool?
That's a good question. it's handy if we have the local Dataweave editor tool. It's again on the, if it is so far most of us getting this tooling instance errors on this Dataweave validations because it takes the most of this tooling instance on the JVM when we write some complex codes and we give some illustration of examples like JSON or Java payloads or whatever the payloads we give. So it's going back to the same question, the previous questions, online editor, local editors for the Dataweave tool. So for MuleSoft recommendation, there's none, but there are some available online actually, where we can actually do the data weaving, like a Dataweave playground, I could say. There's quite a few of them where we can actually write pieces of code. But let's say again, that's not officially recognized by MuleSoft.
There's just one more, Venkata.
Yep.
From Akhil. Can you please suggest when to use map object, pluck, and flatten?
The map.
Fascinating question.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, quite standard actually. I mean, with the map, the only standard we can use the map is, I can actually go back on there. Just 1 minute. So I got the JSON payload. The objects, a simple standard is we use the table, the map object, we use an object, or if we have a list, we use the map. That's the standard scenario where we use in most of us. So, like I said, you can see this. So the map is mainly a list. This is a simple, very, very basic, simple illustration how we can use this map and map object. Yeah, I mean, if you would like to see the more coding of it, I can actually share it across to you as well. Like, so like I said, we can actually convert these payloads from JSON to XML from the previous illustrations. So this is my worktop in the company. As an example, so Akhil, I guess I answered your question.
Yes, I think that's good. Thank you.
Right.
I think that's it, Venkata. Thank you so much. Really interesting.
Yeah, appreciate everyone. Dataweave can't just be covered in about 15-20 minutes. It's a huge, vast subject, actually, everybody know. So I just presented what I could.
So maybe next time we can go into part 2.
Absolutely.
Would love you to do that. Thank you so much.